We have two segments of talks. My segment with my co-presenter, Chelsea, is about waste and waste management, waste tracking, and waste minimization. And there will be a follow-up with that with two of our colleagues talking about how do you do all the parameters, all the things that you should care about in ESG. So without further ado, I'm going to try to get my screen going, and I apologize for a little bit fumbling here. Can you guys see my screen? And is this visible to you guys? Yes?
Not yet.
Okay, let me just, just 1 second, please. Share, screen, share. Can everybody see my screen, please?
Yep, see email.
Oh, wrong screen. Okay, sorry about that. And now I gotta stop the sharing. Don't you just love it when you have to? Okay, I think I have it going now.
Yep.
Okay, and I apologize. It's 5 a.m. in here and I'm a little fumbly. Okay, so our mission statement regarding waste. ERA is looking to give back to the community by getting involved in and investing in projects that matter to all the industries. In order to learn and do what we do, we need case studies and we need to work toward learning more to minimize more. Working together to leave a legacy behind for our children and generate generations to come. Reducing waste at source is the way to for the future. Recycling and reuse is the road to achieving a sustainable environment. And teaching others how to achieve these goals. Using a systematic approach is the ERA's model. In order to develop that approach, and we've done this for air, we are currently ERA started 25 years ago, and air emissions and air pollution was major. And we now have a software that is the standard for all OEMs, especially major air emissions from OEMs like GM, Fiat Chrysler, Toyota. And in order to learn that, we had to actually do many case studies of these plants, these facilities, in order to learn. It's the same thing with dealing with waste and waste minimization. In order to develop a systematic approach, you have to do many case studies. And currently we're in that process. So who's ERA? ERA, a real environmental scientist. I'm a chemist. And my co-workers presenting here, they're all chemists, engineers, and people environmental related, that we study what is related to your environment. We're not just software developers. We have 20 years of 26 years plus of software experience development for environmental related needs. We serve Fortune 500, 100 and 500 companies in US and we're a US and Canadian firm, but we have many clients in Middle East, Far East, and our users exceed 100,000 plus. Why should you choose to try to see if you want to deal with us? We have over 80% automation. We can make your work faster and achieving your goals. We're in a very fast-paced world. You do need to get things done and you need to quantify. And we have superior reporting. We're a trusted international brand and reduce operational costs. That's one of the key pillars of sustainability. While we're trying to do the right thing, we also have to reduce costs in order to be able to be sustainable enough to actually exist. And we have dedicated scientists who work with you to support you. We don't have just software support. In our goal to become more sustainable and learn more about what we do, like to serve sustainability, you have to first study sustainability. So ERA team has spent many years studying all the sustainabilities like SASB, Dow Jones, GRI, CDP, and all the international different regulations. And we want to use this to serve you for your corporate sustainability goals. Knowing the commonalities, there is a lot of commonalities between these regulations, and these are to help us learn and empower companies to meet the strategy for zero carbon initiatives and UN sustainability goals, as well as various sustainability reports frameworks. So it's very important. Knowledge is the key. If you don't know what you have to tackle, you cannot. So we bring that knowledge by studying and spending many years investing and tracking. Each year, GRI and all these regulations, they add and modify, and we keep consistently with them. Through that tracking, we have learned that how do you perform effective waste management and minimization practices and decrease your waste? You have to first gather your baseline. You have to know where you are today in order to be able to build on it. If you don't know where you are and what is your waste and what you need to reduce, you cannot make educated decisions in order to improve it. You should know how many tons of waste of different, which types you're creating and for what period of time. The quantification is very important. But not only knowing what waste, but you have to group them by material type. Are they hazardous or non-hazardous? How are you treating them? Are you treating, or is this hazardous waste on-site, off-site? What is happening to it? And what type of management practices? Is it being reduced, reused, recycled, recovered, landfill, combusted, composted, incinerated, and much more? And finally, is it waste are you doing any waste prevention? Once you analyze your waste, you have to pay attention and see, especially the largest hitting and largest contributing waste. Do you have preventive measures? Are these easy to dispose, or can you make it that you don't have to have that material to be disposed because it's hard and expensive? Actually, there's a lot of money to be saved. One of our colleagues working for GM for 40 years, he managed to save $1 billion for General Motors through waste management and preventive and reuse and recycling. So there's a lot of money to be made, and by preventing, we not only protect our environment, but also make money. So in our software, we have, this is a sample form for GHG, water, and waste metrics collection. So as I mentioned, everything starts with data collection. So you have metrics that we have a system, and Laura Wincombe and Aaron Manitou will explain more about the software and show you a sample of this and how it works. But parameters are set by your company, like landfill, recycling, incineration, because no two companies are the same. You have to be able to customize per facility and location what your organization wants to do, and then track them. But being in a database, the aggregation and footprint, the greenhouse gas emission calculation, and other becomes much more feasible. As I mentioned, ERA studies heavily what GRI, for example, does. This is a sample of GRI generic workflow for how do they want organizations and what they would like you to track and how they'd like you to report. Each of these numbers are representative of one of the GRI's points for data collection and reporting, whether it's upstream in value chain, your own activities, or downstream in value chain. So these are your raw material providers, your own process, and who's using. Because when we're talking about waste, it's not just only what you generate yourself, but also the material that raw material you buy to generate your items, and the resulting endpoint of where your downstream is. ERA has studied and has created a system around this. With a simple collection of your data, we can connect these dots and do these reportings based on each section for you. So if you need, due to your shareholder or other reporting requirements, you need to do this, we can ease your pain and get the GRI or CDP or SASB done, but as well as help you try to quantify and analyze to create understanding of what waste you're dealing with, and how once you know and you've created your baseline, as we explained, you can year by year set goals and try to find the highest hitting, for example, items in your group and create strategies in reduction. But without measurement, without knowing where your baseline is, you cannot make those decisions. Our system allows you, if you've dealt with Excel, pivot tables, very similar technology, but this is a cloud-based system that has a capability to allow you that capability of doing the pivot tables with your data. And of course, you can see your information once you have done your calculation, and this will give you what you need in order to, the tools you need in order to better understand and better report, which is one of our pillars that we have to do in order to survive. There is demands of knowledge from your stakeholders and shareholders of your companies needing to know where we're standing today. And that is why the standards with GRI and SASB and Dow Jones all have been created. And some of you also would like to also look at some awards, but without measuring, that cannot be done. So the system that we currently have provides that tool to you in order to be able to do the measurement. The next segment, which Chelsea, my colleague, will go through, and at the end, I would like to do the final closing, Chelsea, if you let me, for the offer we're going to make. She's going to talk about waste minimization. This is a segment that it's very close to our hearts, and we are trying to create a framework around it. So it is our pleasure to present this piece to you and hope that we can create a strategy for all of us to minimize our waste after we've measured it. Chelsea?
Okay. So I don't see a request control. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen instead.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay.
Have you taken? I don't think you have.
I think it's loading right now.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
See it.
Okay, so thank you, Sarah. My name is Chelsea, and I'm going to be, like Sarah said, talking to you a little bit about ERA's waste minimization strategy today. So I thought we would start with a little bit of background information for context. So according to the EPA, in the United States, 50% of the 292 million tons of municipal solid waste that's generated each year is sent to a landfill. So the negative environmental impacts of landfilling are vast. They range from air pollution from the release of CO2 and methane to groundwater pollution as toxic chemicals are leached into groundwater, health impacts, biodiversity impacts, and the list goes on. So despite all these negative impacts, there seems to be a barrier that's preventing effective waste management. And the barrier is access to knowledge. Many people don't have the right guidance or understand the strategies that are required to make these kind of best practice life cycle decisions about their waste. So inspired by this, ERA has come up with a waste minimization strategy to help both experienced and novice clients in industrial settings in pursuing their sustainable waste minimization options. So our strategy aims to provide a systematic life cycle approach to solid waste minimization to help with your decision making. I'd like to stress the importance of industry collaboration. It's crucial for these kind of comprehensive initiatives, and so ERA is currently looking for partners who are interested in reducing certain waste streams within their company. We'd like to work with you to find some sustainable solutions for your waste, and this could also benefit our strategy as we could use your company as a case study to develop and expand our waste minimization strategy. So ERA's strategy is applicable to many different types of materials, such as cardboard, plastic, wood, and many more. We are hoping to divert the waste from these materials away from landfills and incinerators and towards more sustainable options, such as reuse, redesign, repurposing, recycling, etc. ERA has developed a waste minimization methodology, which includes a 7-step product analysis. So the first step is the product, chemical, and regulatory analysis. In this step, the client will complete a tailored product analysis questionnaire that asks questions about the material being analyzed, such as specifications, its potential contamination issues, plant infrastructure, etc. This questionnaire is specifically designed to initiate an in-depth chemical and regulatory analysis, which uses ERA's master chemical list. And this contains over 160,000 sets of chemical and related regulatory data. The second step is industry selection. So in this step, industries with potential applications for these materials are compiled using industry classification systems. In our case, we would be using the North American Industry Classification System codes, or NACS codes, but this could easily be applied to any global industry classification system as well. The third step is distance analysis. So we know the importance of distance when it comes to making a solid business case. This is why only facilities within a certain range or radius of the company in question are selected for further analysis in order to keep any potential transportation costs to a minimum. We've found that using a 100 to 150 mile radius is a very effective range, but of course this will depend on client preferences and circumstances. So step 4, now that we know the industries we want to target and the companies within those industries, the next step is a comprehensive review. In this step, a review is performed of each of the company's missions, products, websites, etc., in search of potential product applications. So what we're trying to do here is find a potential match between your outbound materials and the other company's inbound materials. Step 5 would be to explore local tools and resources. So sometimes, without even knowing, there may be some great local resources around you that can help with your waste minimization initiatives. One example here in North America is the Materials Marketplace. And this is a platform that connects businesses and organizations to develop reuse and recycling market opportunities. It's kind of similar to Facebook Marketplace for anyone who is familiar with that, where you can post what you have, and then organizations that may be able to use that material have the opportunity to contact you through the platform. At ERA, we believe that if you are working on a waste minimization initiative within your company, one of the best things you could do is spread the word and get the information out there, because more people knowing about the initiative means more opportunities to find potential partners. The last step is the contact phase. So this step is all about reaching out to the companies that we found in the previous steps in order to find some potential partners. All right, so as I mentioned, the company will complete the product analysis questionnaire, which then triggers the chemical and regulatory review. And based on the information collected, ERA will provide tailored recommendations for the material being analyzed. These recommendations provide more sustainable options for how you can better manage and reduce your waste. Each recommendation that we provide is also accompanied by a guidance document, which is a downloadable PDF document, which contains some additional information to help you on your path to implementing this recommendation within your company. Our product analysis questionnaire is also based on a decision tree workflow, and it follows the following sustainability hierarchy. So first, you'll be asked questions about input and design. Next, you'll be asked questions about the process phase, and lastly, about the output phase. Our questions and recommendations are also further classified into the following 7 categories. We have material and contaminant identification, supplier and in-plant contamination, design process and process options, recycling, testing methods, and finally, our least desirable options. So here's an example of the decision tree logic behind ERA's product analysis questionnaire for the material cardboard. So you can see that all of the questions, which are represented by these little rectangles, are grouped based on the 7 categories that I mentioned earlier. So each of these colored boxes represents one of the 7 categories, and the questions are also color-coded based on the sustainability hierarchy I mentioned in the previous slide. So right here. So you can see that the light green questions or boxes represent questions related to input and design. The darker green over here represent questions related to the process phase. And then the darkest green at the bottom are the output phase. So all of these questions are designed to gather information so that we can provide you with tailored recommendations for the material being analyzed. We've assembled these questions, recommendations, and guidance documents into what we call masters or master lists within ERA's software. And the beauty of this design is that it allows for flexibility, meaning that these master lists can be updated and improved as sustainability standards and best practices evolve, as government regulations are revised, etc. We currently have over 200 recommendations, which have been created through research, input from waste experts, collaboration with various OEMs, and this list will continue to grow as our waste minimization strategy evolves and as the research continues. So here are a few examples of certain industries that we have found that may be able to use one company's outbound materials as raw materials within their manufacturing process. So here you can see we have industries like asphalt shingle, coating materials manufacturing. We have plastic product manufacturing, carpet and rug mills, and the list goes on. This slide is a visual representation of the distance analysis that is performed as part of our 7-step waste minimization methodology. So you can see that the black star in the middle represents the company where the material is being generated or the waste is being generated. The colorful dots all around the map represent companies that belong to the industries in the legend over here. And these correspond to the industries that I mentioned also in the previous slide. This green bubble represents the 100 to 150 mile radius from the company in question. And as I mentioned, we only contact companies that fall within this bubble in an attempt to keep transportation costs to a minimum. So having the right tools and resources available to you is important when making decisions about waste minimization. So ERA's waste minimization strategy can help you find sustainable management solutions for your waste that touch upon areas like reuse, recycling, repurposing, redesign, composting, etc. And as I mentioned, our strategy can be used in tandem with other local resources like the materials marketplace. Another resource available to you as part of our waste minimization strategy are our guidance documents. As I mentioned, recommendations will be accompanied by these guidance documents as some supplementary material. Each guidance document is always connected to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So here you can see recommendation R12 relates to goal 3, 12, and 13. And in each guidance document, we also discuss the benefits of the recommendation. We assess cost savings opportunities and revenue generation opportunities for your company as well. So more broadly, what we are really trying to achieve through the creation of this waste minimization strategy is a sustainable thought process. So whether individually or within a company setting, there are certain steps you should take before making the decision to throw something away. So first, you should consider reuse options. You know, can I reuse the item? Can someone else reuse this item? You can consider donating to local charities. The next thing you can consider is repurposing. Can I upcycle the item? Can it be transformed into a new product? And you should always think about recycling first before landfilling. So can the item be recycled in the first place? And it's important to remember that all recycling programs are unique. So getting to know your local recycling program is important to make sure that you know what can and can't be recycled in your area. So keeping this sustainable thought process in mind, here are a few examples of some industrial products that have been reused or repurposed for applications other than what they were originally intended for. So here you can see some pictures of metal drums that have been repurposed into bicycle racks and planters for the garden. So this is a cool initiative. You know, you could send these home with your employees, or they could even be used to decorate the grounds of your own company. Here we have some wood pallets that have been repurposed into furniture pieces and some standing planters. And one great project that ERA is currently involved in is called Electrifying Our Community Green Thumbs, in which the battery containers of the Chevy Bolt and Volt electric vehicles are being repurposed to, into raised bed urban garden planters. So they can be used as is, as seen in the picture right here. The only additions that would be needed would be the addition of some drainage holes, or that they can be fixed up to be more aesthetically pleasing here, like in the picture above. These containers are going to be sent to various community organizations and nonprofits in and around the Michigan area in the United States for community garden initiatives. So this is just one example of how connecting the right people together and keeping that sustainable thought process in mind can result in some pretty amazing projects with a material that would have been otherwise sent to a landfill. So I will pass this back over to Sarah to explain this slide.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. That was a wonderful presentation. Chelsea has been working with a group of 3 and 4 other team members in ERA to promote, and this initiative has been going on for several years, and It takes a lot of work in order to, and a lot of case studies. And that's why we would like to offer free consultation sessions, limited to so many, because we actually take it from end to end. And the reason we're offering this, I mentioned to Chelsea in the past few days, that in order for you to actually learn and build these methodologies, you have to have case studies. And in order to do the case studies, you have to have partners. So we like to offer and have some partners in order to analyze waste and try to promote waste minimization while learning and building a better software for and a methodology around this whole initiative of how do you go to waste minimize. And thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And any questions? There is a question. It says, I believe there was one regarding how do you collect primary data? Do we have time for to answer some questions? Or?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. How do we collect primary data for waste minimization? So you have material data, material safety data sheets, your SDSs, for the raw material and chemicals and products that you receive. So even either you make the product or you purchase the product, but there has to be some SDS related to those composition of those material that can be analyzed to know the toxicity and impact of that material in where it needs to go. Because if it's plastic, it is one type of treatment. If it's metals, another. And if it's cardboard, another. So we're trying to create categories and groups of materials to treat and find out the chemicals and toxicity in them. We have LC50s, LD50s in our system for different chemicals, and we know what can go to what type of product, and that's why the matching between industries and the chemicals. So knowing what your material contains and what chemicals and what regulatory impact it has, and matching it up with the end user's requirements for receiving the raw material, that is our point. Do we do life cycle analysis? Not quite. It's at this moment, and not to say that it cannot expand. We would love to work on a preventive measure, which is analyzing before you make your packaging or your material that is going to go into where then you need to recycle. But and we work with the case studies that are presented to us. If people want to do a study of pre-packaging, or post material that they need to waste minimize, we're not going to restrict people. We ask them to provide us the cases. We make art sculpture. Yes, we are working toward promoting being able to use, especially if your quantity of what you're generating as waste is not large, you want to find more of a community type and waste minimization rather than a large scale. We do assist companies to build their own environmental management system, but using our cloud-based software, in order to learn and build a better software, if each company does only their own software, it is not a shared experience. And that's what the OEMs in North America have learned, and they worked with us for all their air emissions. And now after 26 years, we have a standardized way or how they track and they deal with their waste, their air emissions and air emission impact. So now we're trying to divert our attention to waste minimization, and we would like to help companies use our software, but try to promote their waste minimization. I believe we may be out of time. I know that I'm 4 minutes over time and our colleagues are waiting to do presentation. Would you like then to take over and introduce the second set of the presenters?
Thank you, Sarah and Chelsea. I'll just introduce them quickly.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is by Laura Winkham and Erin Matto. They're both from ERA. Will be talking about sustainability on demand. Laura is a highly experienced EHS manager at ERA. Laura specializes in environmental consulting, software, and implementation services for clients across a number of industries, including automotive manufacturing, wood furniture manufacturing, shipbuilding, and aluminum extrusion. She's also responsible for the management of a diverse team of environmental specialists involved in technical services and client support, as well as software mapping and environmental release calculations. The next speaker is Erin. She has nearly 13 years of experience with ERA software solutions, assisting businesses improve and protect their environmental, health and safety, and sustainability management through advising, generating federal and state compliance reports, permit amendments, etc. Erin is a recipient of many grants and scholarships, including awards from the Center for Wastewater Research, the Bexar Metropolitan Water District Grant, and the American Association of University Women Scholarship. Over to Laura.
All right, thank you so much. This is Erin Manitou here with ERA, and again, I'll echo Sarah's sentiment earlier. We really appreciate the opportunity to present to you guys today. I'll kind of kick it off here and then pass over to my colleague Laura. So a quick, Sarah gave a good introduction about ERA and all of our 26 years of experience. I wanted to kind of build on that a little bit and talk about how, as Sarah was talking about, we work with a lot of different clients, a lot of different industries, which is how we've gained as much knowledge as we have and developed our software to the extent that we have. You can see across all the industry verticals that we've worked with over the years, and many major Fortune 500, 100 companies trust us with their environmental health and safety and sustainability compliance. So wanted to just kind of mention that as our software solution, which is on the cloud, is actually considered a multi-tenant because it is a wealth of knowledge that's been contributed across all of these projects over time. So wanted to give a little bit of context there. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, as they say. Why sustainability? As Sarah mentioned in the keynote, this has been a core part of ERA's mission since the very beginning, since our inception, 26 years ago. And it's been something that we've integrated into our solution every step of the way. We, over time, have obviously seen more and more of our clients and new clients coming to us wanting to, increase productivity, decrease costs, reduce risks. And really the way to do this, to achieve these UN sustainability goals and other initiatives is by data management, data tracking, monitoring. So we all know why we want to do it, but we want to talk to you today about how we can help you do it. So typically in the beginning of a sustainability journey, I'll call it a journey, you'll notice that in the beginning you're trying to understand, what do you want to track? What can we track? Where will we have impact? So in the beginning, Excel sheets are typically how organizations manage this data and get started, which is perfectly understandable. It's very easy to manage Excel. It's very low cost, obviously, and it's very flexible, right? So you can throw anything in there. However, over time, this will not be a sustainable way to manage your sustainability data on an ongoing basis, especially if you're a large organization, if you're adding more and more metrics and tweaking your goals over time. Anyone who uses Excel for copious amounts of data will you know, understand here that this is going to start to get a little bit out of control and can be prone to errors and mishaps. So this is sort of where folks start to prototype and get things going. Another approach, and you know, this is kind of next steps, is to, you know, have a solution, right? So we have a software system, and you can build a custom form, right? So you can say, here's our metrics, we know what we want to track. You can see an example here on the side where it's got all of the fields nicely organized, all the data is collected. However, if I want to add to this over time, I have to go and get assistance to update this form, right? So I, as the end user or the organizer of my sustainability program at my organization, I have to get outside assistance to implement this and to grow it over time, which again, it's not the best way moving forward, because we know that our goals and our metrics are going to keep changing and growing over time. So that leads into our current business model, which is where a end user is finding the system very easy to add data to the software, and they can customize, their organization can customize how the metrics are displayed for their end users. So from year to year, those metrics might change, and so the end user needs to come in, pop up their facility, and all of the parameters that they're expected to populate will be there for them. And this is something that the end clients can manage on their own and grow on their own. And of course, once the data is in the system, you want to be able to get that data back out. You want to be able to search it, index it, roll it up, generate all the KPIs and reports and dashboards. So this is our current business model, and it's proving very successful. Where it starts really is ERA has done extensive research. As Sarah mentioned, we do a lot of studying of the parameters out there, the sustainability frameworks that are out there. What are people tracking? And we've built an integrated list of sustainability parameters. Basically, it's a master list of all parameters you could ever track across environmental, social, governance, economic, for any framework. The next step then is to have a master list for your facility, for your organization that's a subset of this list. So now I, as a user, have made my own list of parameters that are impacted by my organization, right? And then the final piece is what that end user will see when they come in for their facility, for their particular year, and they have a way to enter data directly in. And with that being said, we'll jump into a brief video. My colleague Laura is going to get that going and give you a little bit of a peek at the software.
Hi, in this video, we'd like to show how the sustainability module can be configured to meet your corporate and site-specific sustainability reporting needs and capabilities. The module is fully configurable and scalable for long-term flexibility to ensure that your company can continue to grow and innovate. First, let's take a look at how you can set up master facility standard attributes to define for each facility and each site the specific sustainability attributes that will be tracked and recorded. You can see here in this grid view that each site has a different listing of attributes based on what the facility can and should be tracking. If we want to take a closer look at one specific facility, such as Delhi, we can see that there are 5 attributes currently tracked and can see the factors for each. Let's take a closer look at purchased electricity. Here we can see that the metric is defined based on whether it's active and with a valid as of date, which is used for revision tracking if there are any changes over time. It's important to note that even though this is focused on environmental sustainability, there are also options for social and/or governance sustainability metrics based on what is needed to be tracked. Here for purchased electricity, we can see that this is tracked based on a pollutant for CO2, although others could be included here as well. And the emission factor is defined with a unit of measure, which will be defaulted at the time of data entry for the facility. It's important to note that all emissions are calculated based on the usage that's entered into the system, and that feeds directly into sustainability reports. Now that we've seen how the master table can be preset to load attributes specific for each facility, let's see how that translates at the facility level for data entry. Here at the monthly sustainability metrics, I can click on Add New to load in new data for a given month and year. I can select the facility for which I need to load the data. and enter in the sustainability matrix name based on what we had chosen in the previous selection. The employee name is going to be auto-loaded based on the user that's currently logged in, and I can select the year and the month for the data that will be entered. From here, when we click on Load Facility Metrics, this is going to preload all of the data that was set up in the step for the master to ensure that only the information needed for this facility will be populated here for the site to fill out. This is a dynamic table which is based on the master and shows specifically what is applicable for the site and allows you to make changes over time if this is going to be modified. From here, the user can enter in the metric value based on whatever it is that would be applicable for the month and the year. And similarly, they can change the unit as needed and enter in cost, earnings, currency, and additional comments and information as needed. Once this is complete, the user can save their changes and then load in the complete and close, which will store the data permanently and feed into KPIs and graphical reports. As data is loaded for each facility, that will be automatically reflected on a dashboard, which can be configured per user based on the user role, whether at a corporate level or facility specific. You can see here on the dashboard, we have different graphical widgets that are displayed, as well as shortcuts to get where we need to go in the system. Looking at some of the configuration options for the graphics here, you can see that if we edit data on this graph, you can change the type of chart that we see based on the option needed. And we can also modify display settings such as the color, as well as axis labels and precision. As everything is saved, this is going to be automatically updated on the dashboard, and each graph here can be configured based on specifics for reporting based on different sustainability requirements and different site-specific goals and metrics.
Great, thank you. Now that you've seen a little bit of the software, I want to talk through a couple points regarding implementation. How does such a thing get off the ground in the software? So first of all, because of the concept that we've developed with the master list of parameters, the implementation is what we call rapid fire. So there's not a lot of front-end development that has to happen as you would in a traditional software case, which means that you can get this kind of program up and running pretty quickly. There's also extensive import and automation capabilities, which helps to get your data, your baseline data, loaded into the tool and mapped to the parameters in the forms very quickly. So this implementation for a software project like this can move very quickly. Now, once the data is in the system, a couple things are now taking place. Of course, upon import, there's a QA/QC. This step is really very much driven by your organization or facility-specific business rules. So if there's anything that should not allowed to be entered into the system, or if there's particular units that need to be used, we can put those kind of bounds and protective precautions on the data so that the user is reminded at the moment of import that something is amiss or something needs to be vetted, so that the system does not end up being a black box where data just comes in and it has not been reviewed. So that is happening upon the import step. Once the data is in the system, you can have notifications and alerts. So if you need a simple alert saying data was uploaded through an API, you can do that. If you want to have a notification that a limit was exceeded or a target was exceeded, you can do that. And you can choose which stakeholders in your organization will receive these notifications. And then, as Laura mentioned, the minute that the data is loaded, your KPIs and dashboards will be updated. So this is something that does not take time for anything to be available for reports immediately. Once it's in and vetted, basically it's available for your dashboards and it's available for any of those report extracts that you might be looking for. And to kind of build on this concept a little bit, taking it now into more of an automation integration side of things, you'll, I'm sure, recognize that within a given organization, you'll have many sources of data, right, across that organization. So ERA has developed extensive integration and automation capabilities to help migrate data from any source. Now, this could be API calls, it could be flat file exchanges, and the type of data is really limitless. So it could be utility records, it could be HR information, asset management, fleet or transport information, health and safety information, environmental information. So for us, the system has no bounds in terms of the type of information it can collect and collect automatically. And again, once that data is brought into the system through an import, it is mapped to the fields and the parameters that you've designed in your master, which again makes it available for all of your dashboards and reports. You can see here we've got multiple extracts, and Sarah mentioned it as well: GRI, CDP, Dow Jones, SASB, and anything else in internal or corporate driven is available. And on that front, speaking of the report standards, part of the research that ERA has also taken on is to study these standards and to understand where they overlap. So our research has unveiled that about 80% of the questions across these three, as an example, overlap with each other, which means that once the data has been collected for a given, say, field like energy consumption, this does not have to be entered in multiple times just to achieve these various outputs for CDP and SASB and GRI. Once the data is in the ERA system, we're able to route that data to any of the corresponding fields for these reports, which means that you'll have one clean data set instead of data silos just for a report purpose. So this is something that ERA has also integrated into our solution, is being able to leverage your data across multiple report outputs. All right, and I'll pass it over to my colleague, Laura Weincombe.
Great, thank you so much, Erin. So now that we've learned a little bit about how the software is configured, we wanted to take kind of a deeper look into some of the different parameters that can be tracked as part of your sustainability goals for your corporation. So looking specifically at environmental, social, and governance, kind of diving in on the ESG, we can take a first look at the environmental. So ERA has a very strong environmental reporting background, and it's important to note that within the software, everything is calculated when we're looking at releases. You don't have to input a final number, a final emission calculation, using that master library of parameters, which includes emission factors for greenhouse gas emissions, for example, each of the scopes that we see here. All of that can be input and pulled from that master library, or if you have certain factors that are site-specific or region-specific, that can also be brought into the system to ensure that when you enter in your fuel usage, electricity usage, whatever the case may be, emissions are going to be calculated accurately. So this, of course, is not just related to air, although that's a big piece of it. But as we learned earlier, we have a big component related to waste, which can be used not only for waste minimization, but also tracking and looking at where things are being diverted, how much waste is going to landfill. You can set targets to be able to look at ways to reduce that. And additionally, there's a component here for water. So all of your environmental tracking can be contained within this and feed into reports as we mentioned. Now, we did have a question come in that I wanted to address here, and that's about how data can be input. So as we learned from Erin, there's many different ways the data can come into the system. So if we start kind of very simply, depending on what kind of tracking requirements you have, it could be the simple data entry form, as we looked at in the video, which is really streamlined and tailored to be as simple as possible for a user that's going to input this data. So really trying to make sure that they see only what they need to enter and can kind of do that quickly without a whole lot of other options that might get a little bit confusing. But on top of that, if you do have a lot of data and you have an existing data set, this can be loaded in through an API call, so done automatically, because we do believe that the more you can automate in your sustainability tracking, the more successful a solution you'll have. It's so much easier to spend time analyzing your data, looking at metrics, setting goals, setting targets, and rather than having to spend a lot of time kind of chasing that data to get it in. So if there is a possibility to leverage data that's already tracked in another system, that's really the ideal. So that can be a full automation through an API call or something similar. Or we also have an interface where data can be uploaded. So if there's a way to have anything that's tracked in an Excel output or an Access database, anything of the sort, that can also be a direct upload. So the goal here really is to leverage data that you're already tracking and managing to make sure that you can utilize that for all of your sustainability goals. So if we look a little bit closer at social metrics, you can see here again, this is just a kind of a small snapshot of an example that shows different social metrics that can be managed from that ERA master library. So you can use this to decide what your company would want to be tracking either today or in the future. So really the big benefit of this type of model is that you can pull from that library, but pick and choose what metrics you are capable and want to track today. But with this type of model, it's very scalable and flexible so that your sustainability goals can grow with you over time. So with this, again, there's a lot of opportunity, especially on the social side, to bring in data from other data sets. So some good examples here include any HR data or employee data that you might be tracking, whether from programs such as JDE or Workday. Any way that you're tracking that HR data or employee management can be used and feed into a lot of the sustainability metrics and targets that exist out there. Additionally, as Aaron mentioned, fleet management, accounting, any of that can be used to get pulled in, or again, you can use this simple data entry form here. Now, based on especially that employee data, this is a snapshot from the GRI framework. So you can use and leverage data that you're already tracking to do certain calculations that can be used for reporting out in a framework such as the GRI. So by tracking when your employees are hired, information about those employees, if they had to leave work for paternal leave or an injury, anything at all like that, that can feed in directly to the program. And that can be leveraged then to do these calculations for your various sustainability reports. All right, and looking then at governance, just a similar concept here. This again is a small snapshot of the type of metrics that are stored as part of that library of metrics available. So you can use this to build a framework if you don't already have one, or you can add in anything that you might currently be tracking as part of your sustainability requirements. Anything that's pulled in as part of the facility or the corporation master then will feed into the data entry form again. And one thing I wanted to point out here, the snapshots that we're showing are kind of going on an assumption that different individuals within the organization might have to track different things. So if you've got an environmental specialist, they're going to be focused on only things like electricity usage, waste, water, etc. Whereas others within the company might focus more on social or governance standards. So you can have individualized forms based on who would be filling out this information within the system, or if that's going to be one individual that might track everything, that also can be combined. So it doesn't have to be split out between the environmental, social, and governance like this. So there's a lot of flexibility here based on what you need to track. And I did want to point out too that automation is definitely a big piece of this, and we do believe that automation will make sustainability goals a lot more successful, but that's not always possible in all cases. So you can, of course, have a combination between a manual entry form like this, if there's certain pieces of data that you're not able to automate, as well as data that can be loaded through more automated means. And that's, of course, then going to feed in directly into all of our reports and KPIs. Now, just to talk a little bit more on the subject of governance, related specifically to training records, this is something that either can be brought in from an outside system, if you're already tracking training records for your employees, or can be managed directly within the ERA system. So here we can see an example of different trainings that are required based on an employee job and position within the company. So this is a good way to track and ensure that all of your employees are trained with the correct trainings that are needed when they're hired based on their position, as well as ensuring that they receive retrainings over time based on requirements. So this is a good way to track these metrics and can feed into even other graphical reports that show, for example, in a current time period, how many trainings are completed, if any were canceled for any reason, and how many are active and still need to be done. And that, of course, feeds then directly into your sustainability reporting. Now, similar to Power BI, we can leverage data, as I mentioned, from your other systems and bring these in directly to the ERA system. So the beauty of this is you don't actually need to change anything that you're currently doing. That can be tracked outside of ERA. We can pull that into the system and then have this roll up into different types of reports, which I'll explain a little bit more, but you've got a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to look at that data and how you want to use it for certain types of reports. So this can be be rolled up for given timeframes, rolled up for divisions of your corporation, and for global corporations, we can even do a roll up per geographic location. So all of that can be used to leverage this data, anything that's currently being tracked, and ensure that you get the reports that you need and the metrics that you need to be able to make decisions and meet your sustainability goals and set new goals as well. All right, so I did just want to touch on just very briefly, we're focused today, of course, on sustainability, but there's so much that can go into this that can also be tracked within the ERA software itself. So we've got different modules that can kind of talk to each other and incorporate with each other, from looking at, for example, health and safety tracking. So if there are incidents that happen on site, any type of near miss trackings at the company or behavioral based safety observations, all of that can be tracked within the program and can be leveraged then to feed into your sustainability reporting. We have a chemical management tool that again can be used to ensure that not only do you have an SDS that's available for all employees, but you can track and manage chemicals coming on site and ensure that they meet the regulatory requirements that are needed for your compliance needs, which of course then can speak to a compliance module, which is used for tracking to ensure that all compliance requirements for the company are met on time. That's a good way to make sure that you're up to speed on everything and not falling behind on any regulatory requirements. And of course, we have a full environmental module that's capable of handling all air, water, and waste reporting needs for your individual region compliance, as well as something more federal or even global as needed. So all of these different types of modules are here and available and can speak to each other. And of course, all have a direct correlation then to sustainability. So there's a lot of flexibility based on whether or not you already have systems in place and want to have a centralized location to track sustainability data specifically, or if there's a need for certain tracking systems to ensure that all data is housed in one place and can feed into those various reports. Now, for any corporation or facility that needs to track data more manually, even if that's only for partial data, we do have a lot of options to make sure that the way to enter this data into the program is as simple and easy to use as possible. So we have an option to create what we call different dashboards that can be available for different types of users. So this is a good example of a dashboard that can be used for somebody who is responsible simply for data input. They wouldn't do any analysis, but just simply the data entry. So what they can do when they first log into the system, they'll see this as their first view. There's a button here that they can click on to create a new metric that's going to open up the form that we saw in the video to allow them to do that data entry, which I'll show again in just a moment here. They can fill that out, and then once they complete that record, then they'll be able to come back and view their data on the dashboard. So you can see right away data as it's been entered, just as a quick check to make sure that everything looks good. Additionally here, we do create for companies that use the software different e-learning videos, which are really short 1 to 2 minute videos that are tailored to that company to ensure that they have instruction on how to kind of do the steps to walk through the different aspects of the program. So right here on the dashboard, there's a link to one of those videos, which shows, in this case, the company exactly what they need to do to enter their data, view their results, and even for more advanced users, go further and generate reports or manage their graphics within the system. So this is a great tool to be able to ensure that any new staff that would need to use the program have training right away. It's right there on the dashboard for them to view. And it's also a good refresher for anyone even that's been using the system that just needs a quick reminder because they're very short. Now, once we do click that create new metric entry form, this is going to bring in that data entry form that we saw. This is, as we mentioned, automated based on how you define the master template for each site or each facility that would need to input this. So this is a fully dynamic list based on that master. It can change very quickly over time and is easily managed by a sustainability specialist at your company. You don't need to have a developer help with this. It's really simple for anyone to use. Now, the beauty of this type of form is that once it's loaded, the user can simply populate the value that they need to enter for the time period, and things like the unit of measure and even the currency are defaulted based on how you set up that master. So if typically I'm going to enter units of measure as we see here, then I simply only need to put in the value, and I can edit this inline, just kind of the way you would do with an Excel. So it's simple and using that same type of concept and framework. And of course, then, if there's ever a need to change the unit, you've got a whole listing of units available. Somebody would not have to do any conversion outside of the system. They can simply pick the unit that's going to match the value that they need to input here into the program. Now, with all of this data that's collected, whether it's done manually or through an automated upload, we prepare the data set through our business logic builder to make sure that things can be configured and used then to build any type of graphical output that you might want to see. So as Sarah showed in her presentation, this can be easily manipulated. You can see a little snapshot over here. It's just like the concept of a pivot table in Excel. So we bring in the kind of the tools that everyone's familiar with, but power it with our reporting engine from the back end to ensure that you have all the calculations you need at your fingertips. Now, each of these dashboards and the graphics that we see here can be configured. So as I mentioned earlier, you can have different dashboards based on different types of users. So we saw already that simplified data entry dashboard. This is an example of one that would be tailored to somebody that needs to see the results for social or governance metrics. So things can be set up differently and fully customizable, including kind of changing the size of the graphics that we see, the type of graphics, the colors, as we mentioned, and one other additional option here is adding in a target line to ensure that if you've got certain goals that are set for your facility, you've got kind of a clear visual target to know how you are performing in relation to those goals. So in this case, if we wanted to keep our recordable incident rates below a certain target, you can kind of measure how you're doing. Conversely, if you want to increase the percentage of directors that identify as female, that's something that you can see kind of changing over time in relation to the target and goals for the company. So that can be used either for internal reporting or if you need it for a public report, of course, can feed into that as well. Just to look at, again, another example of this that can be configured. This is more of an environmental dashboard for emissions. These, as we mentioned, are fully calculated within the system, and it is real time. So as data is entered, your graphics will be updated on the screen here. These can be preset, and dashboards can be shared then with any user within your corporation. So you can set it up based on specific user role, but individuals can also create their own dashboards and modify that as they wish. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in terms of having something shared and preset, but also letting people change and manipulate the data the way that they want to see it. And the last point that I want to mention relating to the graphics and the reports that can be produced is relating to benchmarking and normalizing. So especially if you want to compare different sites or facilities within your corporation, it's good to have a normalizing factor to kind of bring those numbers in line so that you've got a fair and realistic comparison. So data can be normalized based on the cost and revenue, based on number of employees, if you're looking at building square footage, that can be done, or based on production volumes or square footage if you're talking about coatings or surface area coatings. So those are just some examples, but all of that can be brought in to, again, kind of manipulate that data into a way that's meaningful for your analysis to meet and even set new goals for sustainability as your company grows and matures in your sustainability reporting. So just to summarize this, the Sustainability On-Demand module from ERA is built on our dynamic platform technology. This ERA has made your sustainability needs as achievable and as easy as an Excel sheet, but it gives you the security to manage that and ensure that mistakes can't be made, and of course has that vetting option for any data that's being imported and uploaded into the system. This is powered on the back end by a strong database engine, which is there for any type of reporting output you need, whether that be towards a sustainability framework or any corporate social responsibility report that you need to produce. And this is going to save your company time, save your company money, and allow you to achieve your sustainability goals with ease. All right, so with this, we wanted to offer a complimentary consultation to discuss your sustainability software project. So if any companies are interested in learning more, if you've got questions about your specific sustainability reporting that you have currently, anything at all, then we're happy to open that up and have a consultation to discuss that with you. And you can find information here. And when the slides are shared, these also have links that you can open up as well. And so with that, I think we can open it up for questions if we have any questions.
I believe we have one question from a gentleman there. Could the GRI guidelines be applied in all countries? What are the prerequisites in moving to GRI?
Yeah, so I can help with that one. So the GRI is definitely a global initiative. I think it's Global Reporting Initiative is what GRI stands for. So yes, it's applied for any country. And GRI is, I think, one of the most comprehensive frameworks from our research. It has many aspects that you can elect to report on. So it's not an all or nothing type of report. You can select certain aspects that you'd like to target and to report for. And obviously it'll change over time as you report. But yes, you can absolutely report for GRI from any country.
That would be it. Thank you so much. That was Sarah Sajdi, Chelsea Scalia, Laura Winkham, and Erin Manito from ERA Software Solutions. So if you have any questions, you can log on to the website. If you want to know about the software, you can just check with them, you can email them, and they'll be happy to assist you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.